we going to do? What's the argument to say? How do we articulate, besides the fact that we know that these guys are on the other side of all the issues that matter and that they're poopy heads and all those things? What is it? Help me out.
So I think the rule of thumb that just at the end of that clip I was sort of alluding to, the WWWD rule of thumb, what would Washington do? What would Adams do? What would Hamilton do? I think this is a good way to begin thinking about the question, because
this question, not any question, right? I mean,
not any question. Certainly
okay.
Not any question, but this question in particular. What does free speech mean in the American context? If you asked any founding father, framer of the Constitution, probably even Jefferson, you said, do you believe that free speech in the American context means that we need to hoist Satan flags at City Hall? They would have laughed at you, or they would have tarred and feathered you, or they would have exiled you to some far-flung island in the middle of the ocean. If you had asked John Locke in his letter concerning toleration, or specifically on the question of free speech, from which we get a lot of our ideas about free speech in this country, does free speech mean that we need to tolerate Satanists? Or he says that toleration should not in any way be extended to atheists. And his argument is an interesting one. He says that the atheists undermine...
We're talking about free speech or free exercise?
Yeah. This is free speech.
Right, so in other words, the category here is atheists, but the conduct we're talking about here is speech.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the establishment of a national church or anything. Even just on the basic question of free speech, what does the father of liberalism, John Locke, have to say in the letter concerning toleration? He says you can't tolerate atheists, and the reason you can't tolerate atheists is because they undermine the entire system on which free speech is predicated. So that's a little bit of an historical overview. To approach this question from the perspective not merely of unfettered reason, but of prudence and history, and the fact that all speech regimes and all political rights necessarily have limits. This is something that the libs like to talk about only when it suits their purposes. They don't talk about it in other cases, but it necessarily does have limits.